My name is Stephanie, and I've been here today in the background as a graphic recorder. And that means that I've been listening to all the conversations throughout the day, and I've been capturing them in a visual way. So I've created a bunch of visual summaries or graphic recordings. And the idea now is that I'll share my screen and I'll share them with you. And I'll just take a few minutes to walk you through them because we've covered a lot of ground today. So the intention is not to add any more new information. It is to take you back through everything that we've already heard. And so these visual recaps are meant as an anchoring exercise for our memory, just to revisit the key points and to help you take away or come back to your big takeaways. And one caveat is, of course, that I'm also only just one person, so I also listen subjectively. So what I have captured may not be the things that you take away as the biggest points, but still, hopefully it will activate your memory of all the conversations. So I'll share my screen now, and I'll show you the summaries. So what we have here is the first session, which was just the basics. What is COP? So we talked about a lot of things here and some of the big acronyms. So starting out over here, there's the UNFCCC or the UNFCCC. That's the Convention for Climate Change of the UN. Nearly all countries are members, and their purpose is to negotiate legally binding treaties, such as the Paris Agreement that came in 2015 after the COP21. Now, these are legally binding, but as we heard, the NDCs, or the nationally determined contributions, they are the country's voluntary pledges. So there's a tension here between, yes, they're legally binding, but the pledges that countries make are voluntary. Then that happens every year at the COP. So those are the yearly conference of the parties being the members, the member states, countries. And this year, the presidency or the host country is the UK, and it's going to be in Glasgow in Scotland. Then we talked about the NGO constituencies. So those are the loose groupings of NGOs and other organizations that have observer status. And an example of them is Youngo. So that's the youth NGOs. They have their annual own conference every year called COI. And there's the two focal points for these constituencies. And so Youngo also has their yearly focal points. One in the global south and one in the global north. And we heard from Ruth, who has been focal point for Youngo in the global south. Then this was a bit of a timeline of big moments. So the first IPCC report in 1990 that kind of started all of this, the Kyoto Protocol, and then the Paris Agreement in 2015. And just some of the key issues that were named and that you might hear again in the context of this COP: mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage. And then we also talked about climate finance, climate markets, and climate ambition, or the lack of climate ambition at a lot of the COPs. And finally, when talking about climate justice, we heard a bit about the historical responsibility. The biggest polluter being the US, but actually if you look historically since the Industrial Revolution, actually it was mainly the UK and Europe, and how there's a discrepancy there between the fair shares or the polluter pays principle. So those were some of the main points of the first session.